Then October 2024, Brooklyn launches his Cloud 23 hot sauce 23 when playing in Madrid, David's number. And the whole family were in London. This leads us on to this story. That appearance in October was their last public appearance together.
The internet didn't need a press release, just a picture with someone missing. A vow renewal that looked perfect, except for the silent gap where a dynasty usually stands. And then when the noise hit fever pitch, Brooklyn didn't throw punches. He whispered, calm, final, like someone closing a door you didn't realize was open. Was this a feud finally exposed, or a family choosing privacy over performance? Because in this story, the quiet moments carry the loudest messages, and the timeline you think you know is about to get rewritten. One ceremony, two last names, and a frame that launched 1,000 theories. On August 2, 2025, Brooklyn Peltz Beckham and Nicola Peltz Beckham renewed their vows. The coverage was glossy, the captions were sweet, and the first look photos landed days later. What people noticed wasn't just the dress or the flowers, it was who wasn't in the frame. In every public image the couple shared, there were no David and Victoria cameos, no Beckham-family group shots.
So I then started looking through Instagram to see. I went through the last 2 years, which events Brooklyn had been at, because if he'd been there, he definitely would have been pictured and they definitely would have posted it, turned up to, or perhaps hadn't been invited to. And big events as well. We found that there was about 11 or 12 events that he hadn't.
Just a tight circle wrapped around the bride and groom. That absence became the headline, even when no one wrote the word. The facts are simple. A vow renewal happened, the couple published their own images. In those images, the Beckham parents did not appear. Interpretation is where the internet sprinted ahead. Then, weeks later, the quiet got louder. On September 24, 2025, Brooklyn finally said something. Nothing explosive, just a clear line. He and Nicola keep their heads down, do their own thing, and focus on their life together. It was a short quote that cut through months of third-hand whispers. If you were waiting for a confession or a clapback, you didn't get it. You got priorities. Marriage first, noise last. And for a story that had been fed by echoes, that calm sounded like a verdict. Here's the crucial split the timeline forces on you. What's documented versus what's deduced. Documented, the date of the renewal, the couple's own posts, the public lack of Beckham family images. Later, Brooklyn's on-record comments about tuning out negativity and focusing on his wife. Deduced, why certain relatives didn't appear in those photos, who was invited, who declined, what was said off camera. The internet loves to color in blank spaces, but photographs aren't affidavits, and captions aren't sworn testimony. That's why the smartest way to read this moment is restraint first, speculation second. Still, the vow renewal didn't land in a vacuum. It landed on a field already seeded with older narratives, some true, some tangled, and some never confirmed at all. To understand why a simple celebration looked like a line in the sand to so many viewers, you have to rewind to the origin myth everyone thinks they know. The dress. If you've heard any version of this saga, you've heard about the dress. When Brooklyn and Nicola married in April 2022, Nicola wore Valentino couture, and the internet immediately read it as a snub to Victoria Beckham's fashion house. Nicola's own on-the-record explanation, given that summer, was straightforward. She really wanted to wear a Victoria design, but the atelier couldn't make the dress in time, so she chose Valentino. That's not rumor, that's from interviews at the time. The gap between what Nicola said and what people wanted the choice to mean became the first crack the story fell into. Why does that matter now? Because narratives harden fast. A practical production constraint, timelines, fittings, couture realities, was remixed online into intent. She didn't wear Victoria, therefore there must be drama, became the shorthand, even though the public record points to logistics, not a declaration of war. When you build a theory on style headlines, it's easy to forget couture is a manufacturing schedule as much as a dream. If you start with a misread, everything downstream looks like proof. Over time, retellings blurred what was said on the record with what was suggested in tabloids. Some outlets have pushed a version where the atelier's timing was relayed indirectly, fueling hurt feelings. Other coverage keeps it simpler. Plans changed, the timeline didn't work, Valentino stepped in. The only safe footing is what the principals actually stated publicly. That's the difference between a documented choice and a fan-fueled fable. And that distinction becomes vital when you hit the next chapter, the reception story that refuses to die. Here's the claim you've seen echoed 100 times. During the wedding reception, performer Mark Anthony supposedly diverted a moment meant for the couple's first dance to praise Victoria, catching Nicola off guard. Nicola was said to have left in tears, returned later, and the night moved on. It's vivid, it's emotional, it reads like a screenplay beat. It is also sourced to unnamed insiders and has never been confirmed by the people who were there. In fact, at least one attendee account challenged the allegation, saying the formal dance had already happened and that the shout-out was celebratory, not a hijack. If you're building a timeline on verified events, this anecdote isn't a foundation. At best, it's a floating rumor. Here's a reality check that complicates the myth. In January 2023, David Beckham served as a best man at Mark Anthony's wedding to Nadia Ferreira, a very public show of friendship shortly after the alleged reception slight. That doesn't automatically disprove the rumor, but it does make a clean, irreversible break less persuasive. Real relationships, especially among public figures, rarely move in straight lines. They swerve, cool off, thaw, and carry on. A viral story can't account for all the ordinary, contradictory human beats that happen after the headline. This is how an unverified scene becomes architecture online. A single dramatic claim starts attracting unrelated moments like magnets. Months later, a missing photo at an event must connect back. A neutral seating plan must connect back. A vow renewal without certain relatives pictured must connect back. Soon, the entire narrative leans on a beam that was never load-bearing to begin with. That's the cost of mistaking allegation for evidence. And it's exactly why the next piece of the puzzle, the only part with actual court filings, matters so much. Unlike the reception legend, the wedding planner litigation left a paper trail. Nicola's father, Nicola Peltz, sued a set of planners after the 2022 wedding. Countersuits and filings followed. By September 2023, the parties had settled. None of that implicated the Beckhams directly, but the coverage created a fog of chaos around the event. When genuine legal noise surrounds a wedding, it primes audiences to see later, unrelated moments through a drama lens. That's confirmation bias with a docket number. Now slot in a public friendship that never wavered. David Beckham's close bond with Mark Anthony, punctuated by that best man role in 2023. It cuts against the idea that a single reception moment detonated an unfixable rift. At minimum, it shows multiple truths can coexist. Legal wrangling over planners happened, a rumored reception slight remains unproven, public friendships continued, and family dynamics evolved in ways we can't fully see. Real life is messy like that. Finally, layer on the 2025 moves that are on record. Brooklyn and Nicola engaged Jenny Offia of Shillings, a high-profile media and privacy lawyer, to push back on misinformation. That choice telegraphs intent. Less rumor, more receipts. It reframes the domino theory entirely. If the dress was logistics, the reception incident is still unverified, and the couple is now lawyering up specifically to correct the record, then what's been tipping the dominoes might not be scandal at all. It might be perception. A set of loud optics from lawsuits to party absences, interpreted as a single story when the underlying facts don't line up so neatly. And this is where the vow renewal snaps into focus. In a vacuum, it's just a couple reaffirming a promise. Dropped into a timeline shaped by legal filings, disputed anecdotes, and social media forensics, it reads like a verdict. The truth is almost always quieter. A wedding with some turbulence, a bride wearing what was feasible on the day, a rumor that never graduated to evidence, and two families setting grown-up boundaries under a searchlight. From here, the story splits into two believable futures: A soft landing where private calls replace public theories, or a cold piece where parallel lives keep moving without a photo to prove it either way. The next chapter won't announce itself. It'll just show up in a frame nobody expected. A timeline can look honest until you see what's missing. In late 2024, the family Christmas photos felt easy. Smiles, tags, no strain you could point to. Then spring rolled in with a milestone. Victoria's 50th was a cultural moment all by itself. Iconic guests, a nostalgia wave, and a notable absence that was explained simply and tenderly at the time. Nicola was with her grandmother. Life isn't a spreadsheet. Sometimes compassion reroutes you. Fast forward a few weeks, and the flashbulbs are back for David's 50th. Wall-to-wall coverage, the kind of night you can hear even when the sound is off. And yet, in all that light, two faces did not appear in the event photos, Brooklyn and Nicola. What does that prove? Only that the pictures we saw didn't show them there. Reasons were floated, reasons were challenged. If you're keeping score on facts, that part is straightforward. One holiday together, later milestones without a visible presence. This is where the internet turns into an X-ray machine. It looks at photos and swears it sees bones. Fewer likes on public posts, fewer family cameos, a quiet table at a different event that suddenly looks meaningful. In a normal family, none of this would register. In a famless one, silence becomes a headline. That's how a simple absence gets promoted to evidence, and how evidence gets promoted to verdict. But a verdict requires testimony, not tea leaves. It's possible to hold two truths at once. The images didn't include Brooklyn and Nicola, and we still don't know the full reasoning behind those frames. Cold distance is a powerful story. It's not the same as proof.
By early summer, the reading got harsher. People started to narrate the gaps as if they owned them. And when social feeds went quiet, the story didn't. It grew louder, which set the stage for the season that always supercharges rumor. Long days, longer timelines, and watchful eyes convinced they're catching patterns the rest of us missed. Summer did what it always does online. It turned quiet into data. Unfollows were tracked like stock prices. Old videos were rewatched in slow motion. Throwback posts were treated as codes. Then, because the internet loves a subplot, a separate thread pulled focus. Romeo's relationship news, and a flurry of comments that tried to rope Brooklyn into an imaginary triangle. The people actually involved pushed back. Denials were clear. Still, the flowchart culture kept drawing arrows anyway. That's the thing about midsummer rumors. They rarely need oxygen. They create their own. By June and July, the narrative had shifted from maybe they're fine to maybe they aren't speaking. Not because a new fact had landed, but because the gaps felt louder than the posts. A like that didn't appear, a caption that didn't mention a name, a party shot without a familiar face. Each small thing was assigned meaning, and those meanings were stacked into a tower that looked convincing from far away and wobbly up close. If you stand back, you can see what really happened. The optics wrote their own story. The quieter the family became, the clearer strangers felt about what must be true. Then came the moment that reset the tone. Not a clapback, not a tell-all, something more surgical. A private decision that carried a very public message about the next phase of this saga. No more letting other people own the narrative. When Brooklyn finally spoke in late September, he didn't spike the ball. He tightened the boundary. We do our own thing, we've got each other's back. No heat, no barbs, just a clear hierarchy of priorities. Marriage first, noise last. In a story powered by speculation, calm lands like a thunderclap. It drains the theater out of the moment. It says, if you're here for a brawl, you came to the wrong house. Around the same time, another signal appeared, less poetic, more practical. Retaining top-tier media and privacy counsel isn't about scoring points. It's about drawing a line. It tells tabloids and timelines the same thing.
If you're going to make a claim, bring receipts. That move shifts the incentives. It makes accuracy the cost of admission. And it reframes the last 3 years. If the dress choice was logistics, if the reception story remains unverified, if birthday optics are incomplete, then the engine driving this narrative was never a single explosive moment. It was momentum, perception snowballing downhill until it felt like gravity. Brooklyn's message isn't just leave us alone. It's we're choosing a different metric for what matters. Dogs on the sofa instead of drama on the feed. Work, not warfare. A kitchen island over a nightclub. It reads almost boring until you remember where he grew up, inside a feedback loop that rewards spectacle. In that context, choosing quiet isn't retreat, it's rebellion. Strip this story to the studs, and what's left isn't a villain, it's a vocabulary problem. The public reads distance as defiance. It reads boundaries as betrayal. It reads a missing photo as a manifesto. But families don't operate on headlines. They operate on calls and dinners and messages you'll never see. The vow renewal was a couple choosing each other in public. The birthdays were events that may have come with logistics or emotions that aren't ours to inventory. The Christmas gathering shows that togetherness existed. The rest lives in a gray space we can't measure with likes. So what now? 2 roads are open, and neither requires a public proclamation. One is the soft landing route, a quiet phone call, a low-key dinner, a holiday that's more careful than celebratory, but happens anyway. The other is cold peace. Parallel lives, respectful distance, and captions that avoid landmines. Both are common, both are healthy. Both allow room for change without an audience taking attendance. Here's the part that actually matters for the people inside the story: clarity. Not the internet's clarity, their clarity. What they'll tolerate, what they won't. Which invitations get extended, which boundaries stay firm. From the outside, that looks like silence. From the inside, it feels like relief. And that's the twist no one saw coming. The loudest development wasn't a feud exploding. It was a family learning to live without performing. If reconciliation arrives, it probably won't be choreographed for us. It will be a door eased open from the inside. If it doesn't, that's not a scandal. It's an equilibrium. Either way, the arc has shifted. Not toward spectacle, but toward adulthood. Not toward bigger headlines, but toward smaller rooms where the only audience are the people who actually count.